You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we have a good friend, longtime friend of the network, also a personal friend, Corey Apirian over at Davinci Micro Fulfillment. He's been on before, as many of you know, probably the leader in the space as far as an industry expert around logistics and fulfillment for the direct-to-consumer world, and that's pretty much anything across the board. And coming off from last week's podcast with Avi Moskowitz over at Pretty Damn Quick, this idea around delivery and driving profitability, but also driving conversion. Is at the top of everybody's mind. We talked about a little bit before. Customer acquisition costs are through the roof. You're doing all this stuff to get them to the site. Now we need to convert them. And profitability is a huge part of my conversations right now. And Corey and I were catching up just last week around things that are going on. And he mentioned on the delivery side how it's increasing conversion. And I just had that conversation with Avi. And I was like, this is perfect. We need to have Corey. We need to have you back on. So we get about an hour of his time today. But Corey, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to do a brief intro on yourself and Davinci Micro Fulfillment, that'd be awesome. And then we can kind of jump into the conversation. Sound good?
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the kind words. I don't know if I'm the leader, but I like to think of myself as someone who's been pretty experienced in this side for a long time. And that's probably one of my superpowers, is that I've been doing it for 20 years. And, I've spent 20 years in the e-commerce logistics supply chain ecosystem, and I've been building pick and pack operations, integrations, and on the front end side, the merchandising, the content, the assortments. Spend time overseas manufacturing my own products and getting them into brick and mortar after a strong success online. And, really at the end of the day, the consumer wants to buy the right product at the right place at the right time, the old 4 Ps of marketing. And, on some level, that's what Davinci tries to strive to do. And we're a physical location network of today's 6 micro fulfillment centers that enables multi-channel fulfillment through our MFCs that are 35 to 50,000 square feet in space, that provide a same day, 1 day, 2 day delivery backed on our technology, where we meet supply with demand by pulling orders from a specific channel, any agnostic channel from 1P, 3P to D2C, and meet that predictively with inventory that's placed through our network optimization tools, and give the brand the ability to have control and profitability while increasing their conversion and lowering their total cost of fulfillment.
That is awesome. Yeah, I tell people that you love logistics, fulfillment, and just have a passion for it. I have a passion for talking to people about e-com, and it's just something we get to wake up and do every day.
Peanut butter and jelly, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. But so let's talk about it a little bit, because I think there's been some changes. And we can get into Amazon a little bit. I want to do the direct-to-consumer side because there's huge focus on that right now. People are trying to figure out, is this actually a profitable channel for me, or is it not? And, I think in a lot of cases, people find it not profitable because they don't have the right back end set up from a delivery fulfillment standpoint. And if you're, one of the things you're just mentioning, about, the 6, different little FCs that you have, and maybe they're big. I say little, but they're probably big. Spread across it. That's that means that package getting shipped to the end consumer costs a lot less, right? And I think a lot of times people right now are looking at, hey, I've got my one fulfillment center in Kentucky or in Chicago or in New Jersey or California, and they're trying to hit the whole U.S. And then they're really doing this deep dive right now in their P&L and seeing how much fulfillment costs are.
Yeah. It's such a, and it's not just that, right? It's not just about getting something closer to the end customer, right? And, I see a lot of stuff out there that says, well, we have 2 buildings in the US and we hit everything in 2 days. And it's like, well, that's not fully accurate. And ultimately, the way that the shipping lanes are built and how the carrier sortation centers are built, like you really need at least 4 to be in like the 99 percentile for UPS and FedEx, and post office is larger, right? Like they have tens of thousands of DDUs, the individual post office. So like depending on the quadrant of product, low value, low weight to high value, high weight, like there are certain items that like lend itself to a certain carrier. And if you want to be SFP and maintain that prime badge, if you want to have a Walmart 1-day, 2-day flag on the marketplace, and then on the 1P side, like Amazon Direct Fulfillment, to maintain guaranteed delivery and the prime badges that you need to do, like you really need to have a handful of locations, but you also need to have the inventory placed with the right assortment. And that's why Davinci has this really equal 3-part philosophy of front-end merchandising network optimization in our physical location network, because it's not enough just to have the physical location network. It's not enough to have the smart merchandising. It's not enough to have the forecasting. You really need to understand who's buying what and where to place that inventory so it can always be available, and then fulfill it and hand it off to the right carrier with the right business rule. In direct fulfillment, Amazon's going to give you an order and tell you to use their ATS carriers. They're going to tell you to use UPS. They're going to tell you to use post office, right? But on the marketplace, there's a certain set of carriers that you can utilize. So if you have the right item in the right place, like that's part of it, right? But when you look at how like shipping templates are built on Amazon Seller Central and Walmart Marketplace, by like feeding up inventory by your proper fulfillment center and enabling the right assortment to deliver in the right set of times, that you're telling the system, because it's all about the promise date, right? Like you think about Amazon and like, let's take Pretty Damn Quick even as an example. Like they're doing this experience on the D2C channel. So let's unpack that for a second. They're telling the customer predictively at checkout when they can expect an item, and they're showing that by doing that and showing different levels of threshold of free shipping, like they can control conversion, and you could A/B test different marketing tools there. And like there is a merchandising aspect that is built into the logistical ecosystem through their technology. Look at Amazon, like their buy box is notorious since day one of the company, right? Of being one of the biggest drivers. And it can be a pain point, right? If you don't control that buy box, but of conversion. So they make it so easy. Buy with Prime, on Shopify, they're bringing that Prime experience into that, right? That has to be in an Amazon FC. So like there's all these connected components of the ecosystem, but you really need to understand how to drive them all together cohesively.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, and I'm thinking about the conversation, with Avi at PDQ, and that was, if you're going to give the options at checkout, you better be able to fulfill on those on the back end, right? I mean, is it really driving conversion? If it'll be interesting. I'm sure it does, because everybody wants the transparency. But how much more would it drive conversion if it takes it from 3 days to 2 days? Or if you're like, hey, I'm being really transparent, it's going to be there 7 days.
Yeah, so there's data out of that. There's data that some of those answers are very visible for a long time. I mean, if you have a Prime badge on an item versus no Prime badge, and you're in a 2-day delivery, like you can expect a 18 to 20% conversion. If you could drive that down to 1 day, you can expect a 25+% conversion. Similar on the Walmart side with a 1-day, 2-day flag. So I think like it's somewhat table stakes now in the ecosystem to be able to manage your orders as a fulfillment company and as a brand, and to know how to meet the service levels required. Now, this is fulfillment and logistics, and there's nothing that's always going to be perfect all the time. Even Amazon, during the Turkey 5, Amazon had a very large handful of their detail pages showed a 5 to 7 delivery cadence, because they knew the volume that was expecting. But what they did was they put the right promise date out there to the customer and under promise, over deliver, instead of the other way around. Like that's where you're going to lose customers. If you tell them you're going to deliver something in 1 to 2 days and it comes in 5 to 7, that's a problem, right? But if you tell them that it's going to be 5 to 7 and it gets there at 3 to 5, 1 to 2, obviously that's okay, right? But it's all about building, as the fulfillment company and the carrier, it's about building that density, number one, but it's also about having the right item. So if you're if you're inside of FBA, as an example, and you have a low value, low weight item like toothpaste or jewelry or something like that, like you're probably going to have like the most profitable experience by having that product inside FBA, as long as you can manage that the right way. And it's really hard to do that on a fulfillment side unless you have many buildings that you can reach the customer and still maintain that Prime badge in that time frame, because it's almost too expensive to go through UPS, FedEx, and you have to go through post office. And post office has a little bit of a longer lead time unless you're injecting right into the DDUs, which is that end post office or sort center, where you can get a same day, next day delivery with them. But when you think about different peak season and different, drive times throughout the year, like, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, whatever, like all the Christmas cards are going through, all the Mother's Day cards are going through the post office. So like your package now, and because of their rates, like so many of the e-commerce marketplaces are jumping into the post office also, and UPS and FedEx have had peak surcharges, and, UPS almost had a strike. So brands and merchants are trying to diversify, their exposure. But at the end of the day, there's a delivery cadence. So if you have a $10 item and it costs $8 to ship alone through a UPS and FedEx, that's under 10 pounds, like that's going to be really hard to make money, versus where you have a, over 10-pound item that retails for 45 to $200. Like you can build that in, and you can comfortably know specifically if you have inventory placed in the right regions, and then combined with the profitability cadence and getting it out of your buildings at the right time, you can deliver that to the customer and meet the service level to keep maintaining that Prime badge or Walmart 2-day flag, or even on D2C to not upset that customer promise.
Yeah. And I think on the direct to consumer side, it's a huge focus right now. So a couple of things come to mind. You mentioned seller fulfilled Prime badges. So they're back. I've had a lot of brands trying it out right now. And if you only have one and even two fulfillment centers, those brands are really stubbing their toe. So they're in the trial area right now, but really quickly, they're getting to the point where, they're getting flagged. They can't meet the delivery times at the end of the day. They can get out the door on time. Right. But, that's
what they care about, the DEA, the delivery estimate accuracy. That's what Amazon cares about. And that's what, and they measure, and so does Walmart. They measure the promise date, that DEA percentage. They measure the carrier first scan percentage. And then, and then that's when the carrier takes a hold of it. Right. And that's a little bit outside of the supplier or brand or merchant's control, but they're still graded on that on some level. Right. Because that affects when the customer is going to get it, physically get it.
So a couple questions that have popped up. First one is, hey, if you only have one or two fulfillment centers, should you go for seller fulfilled Prime? And the next one is, if you go for seller fulfilled Prime badge and you're in the testing, the trial phase, and you lose it because you can't hit the metrics, can you go back and get it later? Say, okay, we realized internally we couldn't do it. So a couple options: we get two more of our own fulfillment centers, or, we go with a Davinci and they've got 6. Can you go back and reapply and get it again? Or is that like a ban forever?
No, you're not banned forever. And I think if you can show that continuous improvement and get back into the trial, there's a second chance on the trial. And then you can also show what you've done to improve. And then you could apply back for that. And somebody will get back to you and tell you, we considered it. And yes, we're going to do it again, because what you're doing, we believe will help meet that. Now, what Davinci does that's unique, I think, is we can work with that brand. And if they're only in 2 buildings, they can use 4 or 6 of ours by understanding where that inventory should be placed and managing the shipping template. That's the key here. The key on all of these channels with SFP and 1 to 2 day is like the shipping template and the integration component, so that you can feed inventory by fulfillment center. And if you can assign the right item to the right building so that your promise date is properly showing to the end customer, and then you can meet the service level required to hit that promise date from the region where you're shipping with the right carrier. This is exactly, again, why like the thesis of Davinci are these 3 things combined: the merchandising, the physical location network, and the inventory placement. Like you have to have those three things. And like the tech that we developed is not only around that merchandising and forecasting and replenishment, but it's really also around the integration and the carrier optimization, because all those things are really connected and they're so critical to understand together. And it's something that, yes, you can build machine learning and AI to help really manage over time, but there is also a human element of having the right operators who know how this infrastructure and game works so that they can position the brands for the right. And you don't have, I think the one thing that I want to make a point of is like, you don't have to have a Prime and 1 day offering on your entire assortment. You don't have to do that. And you don't have to do 100% of your assortment through fulfillment. I think understanding the profitability and customer experience and putting the right items and being able to move those items between in FC, Prime-esque or just merchant filled on the Seller Central side, or Walmart Marketplace, WFS, value standard 1 day, 2 day. If you understand how that works on the Walmart Marketplace, like that in my opinion is the right way to do that. And then you change that on a more dynamic basis.
Yeah, I think where we're getting to is next level. I mean, it's across the board it's happening. So this is interesting, right? Because if we look at this evolution, it is, you've got, 3PLs that people are using. You've got FBA, and you've got, basically 1P vendor, you're in their FCs.
That's true though. 1P vendors, you have to have direct fulfillment if you're a 1P vendor at Amazon.
Right. But I mean, it didn't used to, like, if I go back like that is, I ship it in and that's it. Right. Or I put it in FBA or
within that way. So for me, that's just like how I've been brought up or I was one of the first ones to do it with Amazon. So like, that's what I know. And I've seen it be such a successful strategy, whether it's a hazmat item, a brand new item, SIOC chargebacks, the list can go on of why you need to do that and insert Amazon's new regional fulfillment model. Like you really have to back up yourself.
Yeah. I mean, but it used to be like simplistic how people looked at it. Doesn't mean it was simple, but how they looked at it. And now is, the past 3 years is everything has accelerated. Everybody's taking this step back. And that's why I like this profitability piece is how you're looking at it doesn't have to be a one-sided approach. And even by vendor, hey, we're now FBA or we're self-fulfilled Prime. And so now everything in Walmart has to be that way, or vice versa. That you can now select, or, hey, I have to go all in with a 3PL or all in with Amazon. I can't have two separate sets of inventory. And when we're peeling back the onion here, it's kind of hitting me like, so somebody could literally come to you now and say, hey, I've got two of my own fulfillment centers. They're both on the East Coast. I've got that covered, but I don't have the West Coast and I don't have central portion of the US. I want to use 4 of your fulfillment centers across there. You can plug in and have that different inventory forward deployed. So you can hit anywhere in the US. They're not all in with you. They can still, handle everything they want to handle internally. But then they can also selectively say, hey, I want this to be seller fulfilled Prime. If they're moving a huge push right now, as people try to figure out profitability, should I be 1P or 3P?
Yeah.
Right. But they know if they go 3P, they need seller fulfilled Prime option. And you can start really mixing and matching your delivery, methods, partners, and where you're selling it at based on the catalog items that you have, rather than taking a holistic approach. I'm all in FBA.
Correct.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
That's just, everybody's shaking their heads like we really want this. But we don't really want it. It's like when you go show up at you really need a new car, your car broke down and there's, 50 different colors and types of cars. You're like, I just wish there was one, right? One option, because that's the easiest. But
one minivan.
People are going to be peeling back now. Okay, I need to look at my catalog holistically. If you really want to get into profitability, right, which everybody's looking at, I need to look at this thing holistically across direct to consumer, all the different marketplaces. How do I want to engage on the marketplaces? How am I going to do fulfillment? What partners am I going to have and how am I going to plug in? And then how am I going to sell each item to maximize the overall profitability? And the companies who do that and take it next level are going to crush it. especially over the next year.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, everybody wants to know that. I mean, I think, there's a lot of people in the industry last year that said, by June or July of 2023, things are going to start to look really good, and here we are in a freight recession. And, despite what the news says, like Black Friday was good for e-commerce shopping, but a lot of people went back into the store. The Temus and the Sheins took some, market share, et cetera, TikToks out of Amazon and Target, Walmart, and, brands, are very carefully watching their advertising dollars. It's harder to get capital. Interest rates are still high, so there's less capital available as a result of it, and valuations are down. So, that's put pressure on, and consumers aren't spending as much, right? Like highest GDP in the country that we've ever had in 2023, but that doesn't mean consumers are spending, on e-commerce and retail at the levels that they were before. They're spending on different things, and I think the interesting thing here is that everybody's now looking at, reverse logistics and freight and optimization and all those things. But like the ones that have invested in their own infrastructure, and going back to what you started this podcast on, was like, this 1 to 2 day fulfillment. I could hit the whole country in 2 days, from 2 buildings. Well, you really can't. And like, if you move that 2 day to 1 day, like that's a really big financial impact. That's a 25% increase, decrease, however, which way you look at it, zone to zone, from UPS and FedEx alone, or even post office, could be even more. And when you're in a $20 item or even a $100 item, like those could be really impactful gross margin dollars to the business, and things that can be reinvested while increasing the conversion. So you're growing your top line by moving from 1 to 2 day, and you're completely increasing your cash on hand because your freight cost is so dramatically lowering, and you're completely creating a flywheel in its own, specifically if you have the right item being sold there, and then you can feed those item sets off other channels. Like that's the way that I've always done it. That's the way that I try to tell my brands and merchants that are working with Davinci now, and they appreciate that insight, because like I said, our superpower at Davinci is we have a lot of operators here who have been doing this for a long time. So we've kind of seen history repeat itself throughout the ecosystem over 20 years. And we're just trying to give that knowledge back to people.
How many times do you step in and you save people money at the end of the day? Because I can see that happening.
Yeah, almost every time, right? I mean, there's certainly times where it's purely incremental. There's a lot of our brands that don't have the capability, but Amazon told them, you need to have direct fulfillment. You need to backup supply these core ASINs. I can't bring this in. It's meltable. It's hazmat. So they didn't have it before. So it's purely incremental, but it's an opportunity cost that they didn't have. So that's, but it's done in a very profitable way. However, there are, several dozen brands in our ecosystem that we are saving them money on a day-to-day basis. And it depends on what the category and the quadrant where they are in when you look at the percentage of savings. But I would say, the 20 to 25% savings and a 30 plus increase in sales is a reality for the brands in our ecosystem.
Wow. Yeah, I don't see, especially, and I even think you talk about incrementality. There's also the missed sales aspect, on the merchant fulfilled side. If you're in vendor, how do you back up inventory?
Not on merchant fulfilled, on direct fulfillment.
Direct fulfillment. Yeah, because I have a lot. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, there's a lot of brands that still have this mentality. I need to be an FBA or nothing. And like, it's so dangerous. I mean, I talked to a brand a couple of weeks ago that was a dinnerware brand, and that's a very high SKU count brand. And they were launching a new collection and redo. And, they're putting 400 or 500 items into Amazon FBA. And like, to me, that's just like so dangerous, and you don't really get to learn the right way that way. Now, I understand that a Prime badge is really critical and necessary, but you can take less sales to build your presence online, and then use that data to go put your top sellers into Amazon. And let me just say it this way: there are certainly some use cases where putting all of your items in FBA still are logical, right? Like if you have 3 items in your brand, and you're a startup, or you're a young company, or even you're at scale and you're just chipping pallets into FBA every 30 days or so, I can understand where that's still going to be the cheapest date in town, and it's just easy to manage, and that's it. But you also need to diversify the channels that you're selling on. So, if you're just on Shopify or BigCommerce and you want to buy with Prime, or you want multi-channel fulfillment, again, I can understand like the easy button of that. But if you're really deep in multi-channel fulfillment and you have a big brick and mortar presence and you have more than 20 items in your portfolio, which is most brands we work with, right? That strategy becomes less and less attractive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even thinking from we're talking about the inventory standpoint. What's happening right now is, as we get to the end of 2023 here, end of Q4, Amazon's really dialing back on POs. And I think it's this interesting game, right? That's always played. They want to have the lowest amount of inventory on December 31st.
Yeah.
But brands do as well. And so brands are watching their weeks on hand of inventory go way, way down because the POs aren't coming through as we are in the last, 4 weeks of December here. I mean, we're recording this on 12/21, right? They're not getting the POs they need, and they're really in danger of going out of stock. That's where people are looking at right now. I mean, Amazon wants to take it down to less than a week of inventory, and that's across the board, even on some like New Year, New You products, which is huge.
Which is why if you have direct fulfillment, you still maintain Prime. You don't lose a cent. Now, what's the difference for a brand? Like how they look at their inventory, if you're managing it in what I think is the right way, where you're direct with the channel, right? You're still direct with Vendor Central. You're seeing every order come in. You're not seeing 1,000 orders bought in a single day. So you have to adjust expectations on inventory control and ultimately like your own financial reporting, because it is a difference, but it evens out in a really healthy way. And ultimately what you see is a increase in top line over 15% for all the brands that do it this way. And because you're maintaining control, and a huge increase in profitability because you don't have to worry about shipping, freight allowances. You don't have to worry about chargebacks and bagging and prep and SIOC, like all of these things that cost a lot more money. Now, having an item that is manufactured as SIOC versus prepping it to be SIOC are two different things. And I heavily recommend brands have an assortment that can be multifunctional with SIOC for in-store and online if it's an item that's sold in both channels, or if it's an online exclusive and you have the volume, you really should be trying to manufacture that item in SIOC, because there's a lot, sustainability cost, operational ease for whether it's your own buildings or a partner's. Like it's just a much cleaner way to do it. And then there's a much better customer experience. I mean, most people, when they buy items, they're not saving the packaging, like that goes out to the trash most times, right? There are some exceptions to that. But for the most part, that's the reality.
Yeah. So, in those instances, like, are you doing the kitting and the bundling as well? Because I'm thinking of another thing that when we talk about smaller, I should say lower ASP items. I mean, people kit bundle, to try to get the price up.
Yeah, you have to, right? But like you can't force the bundle. And that's a big thing that we do. Like we have some very unique bundling capabilities, and with the tech that we have on the network optimization and the merchandising side, like it really is an important thing to do if you're a CPG, food, beverage company, beauty, pharmacy, OTC, whatever. You're not going to do it with 2 toaster ovens, right? So it is category specific on some level. And it's very channel specific also, but it allows you to do that. It allows you to create more inventory turns and sell the right item and kind of test that through. And I think where the D2C piece comes in is that you see a lot of these CPG companies being forced to bundle on D2C, which is not a bad thing. And people love variety packs, and their buying habit is certainly different. But if you're selling a Crest toothpaste, right? Like someone's just going to walk into Target and Walmart and throw it in their shopping cart, or a grocery store, right, as they're walking down the aisle. But if you want a 3-pack, like, I subscribe and save my toothpaste on Amazon, and, I get a 3-pack and I don't have to worry about it for however many days, right? But at the same time, like, you can't force the bundle on the customer, but you also have to be cognizant of the freight. And then you have to like ask the question, like, who am I selling this to? Like D2C, you're selling it to an end customer who really wants your product. But if that item is available similarly at Amazon or Costco or Target at a different value or a similar value, like, am I undercutting retail? So you have to balance that. When you insert a channel like TikTok, which I kind of look at on some level as like the new broadcast channel. It's like the new HSN and QVC for the younger generations. Like, it's kind of like this spot buy, and like there's all this technology that's like feeding advertising up. So you're hoping that someone's going to see it and buy. There's no add to cart and like waiting later in those channels. So, how are you selling that item? There has to be some call to action, some value driven component to the merchandising. And the channels are not blurred. A lot of people talk about how the channels are blurred now. That is a channel, right? Like, in my definition of how I look at marketing and merchandising, and how you fulfill that is another conversation, but clearly connected. So, I do think it's important for CPGs to have D2C presence. Does it have to be their highest volume presence? No, it doesn't, right? But it is their connection to the customer. And you do get to do things there that you really can't do in other areas online. Or
yeah. I mean, I'm even thinking, build your own bundle. I'm thinking test and learning on bundles and packages before you would launch them to a broader, marketplace base. If on the back end you have the capability,
data, right? If you have an item, because you can't do that on Amazon or Walmart.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, site, like, you can capture that and then go market to those consumers that are loyal consumers for your brand.
Yeah. If you've got the capabilities in the back end.
Correct. And that's a whole nother conversation.
And that's like, I think something that's slowly changing. I know on the brand in my brand days, the logistics, crew in the back, right, that are picking, packing, shipping, like they didn't want to go break open a single case and put a bunch of stuff in a box and ship it to, rural South Dakota. They wanted to put it on a full truckload to Walmart and get it out the door.
Exactly right. And
then we had to set up, a separate, because it was interfering with how they were pulling. Because partial cases that way, first in, first out, you grab the first case. Well, there's 3 that's been removed for a direct consumer order. So then you get into these weird partial cases. So we had to update the ERP system, right, to have a specific warehouse to handle individual pick, pack, ship. And then we had to actually gate off that portion of it was a virtual warehouse, but then we had to gate it off because if they ran low on inventory, they'd walk in there onto our shelves and grab it. It made sense. You're shipping it to Walmart, get it, make them happy. But there are all these things in the back end that people had to work their way through. And I think slowly there's enough pressure now that, those teams are realizing that, like, when we bring in like a Davinci, it's not impacting their overall job or role. We're not making them obsolete. We're just removing the pieces they don't want to do anyways. Right.
That is so true. And it's so funny because I just had this with a brand this week that we've been with for many years. And they're you still see, that's a human nature thing. You still see that fear come up. But like, if you just let the system do, like, it's taking the things that you're complaining about anyways, and we automate that. And then they're like, oh, wait, you're right. This makes sense. Look what this just did, and it's for the right reasons. And I think people see that, what the intentions are and what we're trying to accomplish together with them. Selfishly for Davinci, I can say that firsthand that we've had those positive experiences, but this is still the first few innings of e-commerce, right? Like,
so true.
We can't take our eyes off of that. There's so many smart people in this industry, and there's so much more data and transparency and visibility today than there ever has been. But it's still early days. I mean,
it doesn't feel like early. I know when we say,
I know it doesn't feel like early days
because the last few years have been so frantic. It's like we ran.
People got their PhD during COVID in e-commerce, but it's still early days.
Yeah, I would say the last few years, to me, it feels like we were running a marathon, and in the middle there was like 8 sprints, right? Like 800-yard dashes. where you're totally exhausted, but you have to push through. And then you think it's going to slow down. But now, in all reality, I think things are slowing down. The fact that this many people are looking at, are taking a pause, right? They've signed up for everything over the past couple of years. They're taking a pause. They're reevaluating Amazon agencies, their direct to consumer, their branding agency, how they're spending. Obviously in the fulfillment space, how are we actually fulfilling? How are we delighting the customer? Who are our partners? Do we need a partner? Do we not need a partner? And all of that, what's interesting is all of that right now is being driven by profitability. And it's not just by, hey, this is the coolest new thing, we have to have this, or our website's going to go down, or we're not going to sell as much, that the fear of missing out if we don't have it. It's literally being driven by, hey, let's take a step back. What's working, what's not, what's being impactful to budget and what's not. And then let's pick those partners, right, that, or make those hires that are going to be the most impactful around our profitability going forward. And that's exciting.
Totally.
Because I think you're right. They totally think you're right. We're just in the first few innings here, but everybody's started to get their bearings. It's like we played the golf course a couple times, right? And now we really know the golf course. So let's go fine tune our game for it. I've been picking your brain for a while. Like, I always like to throw it out there. Anything you want to, any questions you have for me?
I mean, I guess, first of all, I love these conversations. This was a great one. I love this stuff, and it is really starting to get scientific here. So I love it. And I really welcome people to listen to, what we talked about earlier on shipping templates and assortment planning, and, making sure that cadence is proper. But I would say from your side, like, what do you see brands talking about? I mean, you just alluded to it right now. They're looking at agencies, they've tried every tool. Like, what are they coming out and saying from a feature set and ELT capability that are like the must-haves going into the next 3 years? You talk to every brand, so you hear it, right? One of the most respected guys in the industry I've ever.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to work backwards. It is, first of all, it is on the delivery side, which is super interesting to me. The fact that we're doing 2 podcasts in a row on it is just because it's so keen for everybody out there that, like, do they want it in 2 days or 5 days? Let's be real. Everybody wants it in 2 days, but they'll settle for 5. But if I have the choice between 5 days and 2 days, and most times I'm taking 2 days, unless I'm on vacation or something crazy like that. So this delivery aspect and control, if I think the driving factor is profitability and the theme is control. I want control of my inventory. I've been burned by Amazon multiple times, and every time I think we're friends again, they do something like this, and they don't they don't issue POs in December to hit their number, and now they're affecting my number. So control around inventory, control around paid media, retail media, right? The control
or like measuring the efficacy of the return.
Yeah, like they want to know that when they're turning this dial, these things happen, that they're in control, and they can turn this dial if they have too much inventory, and inventory goes out the door, and they can dial it back and it comes back. Now, the reality is there's 8 dials, and how do you control them in the back, right? They're like the guy in the soundboard. Everybody can play an instrument. The guy on the soundboard makes it all sound good. They want to know, okay, where all this stuff is funneling through a soundboard that we can control. Now, what makes them freaked out is AI, right? And what's that going to do across the board internally at their companies? And people are freaked out that their jobs might be gone. They won't unless you don't embrace it, right? You have to become the best person at your job. It's just giving you a new tool set. It's like we're giving you an eraser. You've always been drawing in a pencil. We just gave you an eraser on the end of your pencil. Don't freak out. You just got one more tool.
The way that I look at that is like you just have like this heavy computing power to like crunch numbers in a way that could take you 10 years to do, but will actually end up taking like 10 minutes, right? And that's a little bit of a generalization. But then you can use that data because you still need a human driving the business, at least right now, right? Like I'll never replace people inside of our buildings with all robots, right? For a variety of reasons, but I can enhance their jobs. I can make them safer. I can make our efficiencies greater by putting automation into the micro fulfillment centers, right? And that's something that we're on pace to do. And I look at that very similarly, right?
Yeah.
It's making it better.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the thing that's freaking them out is they have this driver, this theme of control. AI, they don't control.
No.
And they don't understand it yet.
Yeah.
So it's this wild card. And why hasn't then there been a immediate mass adoption is they don't quite understand it and its impact and the tool sets they need to use to optimize it. So that's as soon as they figure that out and it hits that control space. And the other one is just, hey, who's the right people on my team? And again, you have the pandemic hits, everybody puts digital in front of their title on LinkedIn, right? Just so they could jump to a different job and make more money, right? So content specialist, digital content specialist, like that. Well, really? Or did you just put digital in front of your name? And so there was this massive hire. And what we're seeing right now is people are kind of like a blanket trying to trim people out so they can go back and rehire the right people. So that's a weird thing that's going on, but people they want to control, not only the tech stack and what's in the inventory and, everything around paid media, but they want to feel good. Like they're in control of the people who are on the team and they got the right people on the right seats on the right bus. And that's hard. But I think people have this giant, like, we're finally there. Like we're finally there where we can start doing the stuff we always wanted to do. And that's exciting for me. I think it's going to be a super interesting year. I think, again, if you're in the digital marketing side of the house, like just buckle up. You thought it's been crazy the past few years. It's going to get crazier with AI content generation, AI bidding. Like it's going to get crazier for you. I would spend, if I'm in digital marketing, I'm spending 10 hours a week looking at AI tools and AI as a whole. That's what I'm doing. And I'm playing around with them.
Yeah.
I'm getting as many free trials as I possibly can. I'm doing it all in a sandbox. But yeah, that's crazy.
So interesting. Interesting.
But I see we're literally right at time here. We need to do multiple of these every year, Corey. Truly appreciate you, everything you're doing for the brands and the network, and the friendship as a whole. I love how you pour into our network as a whole. You educate me in this space seems like on a weekly basis now. Corey's the one I reach out to when I have any questions in the supply chain logistics space. It's just all around great asset to the network. How do people find you as a whole?
Yeah, they could reach out on our website and our contact us, or you can email me, Corey, COREYA at DaVinciMFC.com.
Awesome. Follow him on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Corey. Thanks everybody for listening. And that's going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive.
Thanks for everything, man.